Peace and blessings. Love and service family. My name is Brother Hess. I'm also known as the Great White or G White. Raised up growth and development by formerly being known as the Black Gangster Disciples out of Atlanta, Georgia. Since 1992, at the age of 12, I was pretty much pushed out of school, and I chose to go into the streets rather than to run home and sit up under my godmother. And going and venturing into the streets of Atlanta, Georgia, going downtown, meeting the Black Gangster Disciples, I began to form a bond with these brothers because not having a father ever in my life, only speaking to him one time on the phone before he passed away from HIV and complications with HIV at the age of 10, I always wanted a father figure. I always wanted big brother figures in my life. And I always, as a biracial child growing up in the black ghetto community of Atlanta, Georgia, I always wanted someone who accepted me as an asset, to that family or that group setting. And so growing up, yes, I was being picked on, ridiculed, called white trash, honky, redneck, chicken shit, and other forms of, joining, as children in the ghetto often do. I grew a wall, and I grew a certain dislike for bullying, for people finding methods and ways of picking on others. And so when I joined the group of the Black Gangster Disciples as half-breed, I formed a identity unlike anyone else. I always felt like by me having a white mother and a non-existent black father, I had to go harder in the Black Gangster Disciples than anyone else did. So I always strived to work harder to figure out what it was that we needed, what was missing, what were the key components to be able to learn from each situation that went on when a brother messed up or when a sister, was going left when she should have been going right. How can we bring this family group setting into proper placement? And so from the age of a 12, 13-year-old little foot soldier, or, little youngin, what we call YG, young G's, I always wanted to be able to come and bring something to the table to be able to be valued. And I grew up into this, and I grew up going to juvenile because, yes, we did, do things that delinquents do. We stole in order to eat. My mother was on crack rock living up under a bridge by the age of 14. So I invariably, grew a love for understanding the lowest levels of the street because I always wanted to win my mother back. I learned how to sell crack rock. I learned how to, boost out of stores, how to, con, how to rob, take, to do whatever I needed to do at the time in order to bring things together, so to speak, cope, provide. And was it right? Of course not. It was very wrong. And I had a type of method by growing up some of the time in my suburban white grandmother and grandfather's home. I knew something about that side of responsibilities on a daily basis, that side of conditioning to, be frugal, to go to thrift stores, waste not, want not, all these things of, reciprocity, community building. So I would spend a summer with my grandparents and then come back to the ghetto to go to school in Atlanta, Georgia. And this coming inside of the Gangster Disciples, who was now segueing by 1993, 94, 95 in Atlanta, Georgia, into understanding that the leader wanted us to grow and develop. And understand that meant we had to put down the guns and the knives. We had to put down the drugs. We had to put down, the thugging. And we had to pick up our education. We had to pick up going into, higher levels of learning or the military or the community building setting in order to be an asset to the community. And this wasn't easy to comprehend, especially not as a 14, 15-year-old survivor. And so, long story short, on my adolescent stages, I was what they call a victim of arrested development. And I began to be conditioned to take the harder road in life. So I faced going to prison, but I would get out of juvenile, come back to the streets of Atlanta, Georgia, get back into the crew, and I would be the one to challenge other young black gangster disciples to, hey man, instead of us going and robbing these folks today, and y'all say y'all got love and loyalty for me, hey man, I got this old junkyard lawnmower that I got fixed by the old man, and I got this milk jug of gasoline. I got this rake and these hedge clippers. Should I go out there for y'all and risk going to juvenile, even though my mama ain't gonna come get me for 2 months? Y'all get out 2 days later. I have to sit there for 2 months because no one's there to get me. So why don't y'all come with me and let's go cut some grass and rake some leaves? And this began to build within me a conditioning that I had a whole new concept within me to challenge their loyalty, their love. And they actually came along with me. Yeah, some of them kind of dropped out and didn't want to hang no more because they didn't want nothing but the bad life. But more of them took the challenge to come with me than to go out and go and rob, go and steal, go and, do something that was delinquent. And so, as I got into my 15th, going into my 16th year, I made a decision to stop hanging downtown and to remain in my Hunter Hill community on the west side of Atlanta, around Simpson Road, Bankhead area. And I chose to go and see if I could get me a job. I'm not in school. Ain't been in school for a couple of years. I'm 16 years old. I want money in my pocket. I don't want to keep selling crack. My mama's not coming out from under that bridge or out of that cardboard box. She loves ding-a-ling and crack pipe too much. And I don't know what else to do but to strive to begin to progress, in the light of what Mr. Larry Hoover expected of us in growth and development. And so I wanted to achieve that sense and that level of success for a father figure I've never seen. I've never heard his voice. I only heard stories of what he wanted for us young gangsters. And so that is where my turning point came in the beginning of my life. I went out and my uncle ended up coming and getting me a job for a plumbing company called Art Plumbing Company. And I went in there as a 16-year-old. They said, listen, now you can't work for 39 hours and 59 minutes a week. You're underage. And I went in there and I worked harder than anyone. I didn't want to take any breaks. Even when there was nothing that seemed to be able to be done, I wanted to clean out the barrels where they had the L's and the different, cross-section pipes, the joints that bring the pipes together. I wanted to clean all the leaves out. I wanted to sweep out all the dirt out from around the parking lot. I wanted to go into the warehouse and, begin to adjust things in there to be more neat and in order. And the owner came and was like, young man, I have never seen anyone work this hard. I want to get you a uniform. And if you're willing, on your 17th birthday, I want to send you to Master Plumbing School. He said, but you got to get your GED. What do you think about that? I said, my God. I said, thank you, Jesus. And I began to work even harder. I didn't want any lunch break. I would get me a little something to snack on. And I just wanted to make a difference in that place. I wanted to show them that even though I grew up without a father, even though my mother is on cracking in the streets of the Bluff in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the worst communities there, like I could still go a different path, and so I chose to do this. I got my uniform. I felt so proud because I wanted to go into the Marines upon, becoming of age. But this was a secondary path, a secondary opportunity. Well, I got my checks on every Monday, and I go and cash them and help pay some bills, help get my little sister some clothes or whatever she needed for school because she was in a higher learning field. And so they sent her to a special high school, North Atlanta High School. And So this went on for a few months, and then one of those days I was feeling depressed. I got my check, and instead of going and doing something good, I reverted back to my old habits. And I was going to the liquor store with my cousin, Darnell, and we went and got a fifth of E&J. We call it Irk and Jerk, and it's basically low bottom brandy. And we went and got a dime weed from Simpson Valley, and we smoked and rolled it up out there on the strip on Simpson Road. And before you know it, we was drunk and we couldn't find the other blunt. And I'm like, man, what is you doing now? You gonna just lose my stuff? Man, I've been working hard for this. And we crying and drunk and ready to get mad at each other. Before you know, we realized, oh man, our little partner ran up the street with it. So we went to running up the street to find him. But we drunk, when you're staggering on up through there, and we see a dude that owed us from our old crack selling days months ago. And we ran across the street. Hey, man, give us that money, man. You've been owing us. See, you're going to go buy something now. Long story short, the man said, F you niggas, and swung on my cousin. And when he swung on my cousin took the blow, grabbed him, slammed him on the ground, and went to kicking him. The lady with this hollering, and she was going to go get the police. And I'm like, he protecting himself. He swung on us. As I'm arguing at her and telling her she needs to stop him from swinging as she's running around the corner. I'm going around the corner too. And before I know it, she went into the middle of the street, flagged down the police, and I ducked off into the bushes. As I ducked off and I ran back up that way to tell my cousin, here come 12. Here come 12, shouted. They rolled past me fast, and they caught him in the midst of kicking the old man. And long story short, that man ended up on life support system. He ended up brain hemorrhaging, and he lost conscience, and he was bleeding out of his eye sockets, his ears, and the officer locked my cousin up. And the next day, the old man's nephews came and said, hey, when you with that guy? It shot at me point blank range with a 380 when I had gotten off of work. And I ran, and by the grace of God, after 7-8 pops popped in the air, I knew I was shot somewhere in my back because I ran for my life. But I knew I couldn't have been dead because I'm still breathing. And so I rolled over on the ground as I heard the car going up the street, and I felt my back to see where I was hit at. And by the grace of God, I don't know how, but within only a 3 feet range and going to run when the fire started popping out of that 380, I did not get hit. But my auntie said, you got to get out of this house. You can't live here. What you got going on, you always been a troublemaker. You have to get out of here. I got other children here. We can't take care of you. She called the police, told
the mic's back on.
The police said, well, I'm going to lock him up. I'm going to send him in here, and then we're going to put a misdemeanor charge on him. They locked me up for a misdemeanor, and then they sent me to a group home for my own protection, and then mysteriously came back 3 weeks later and rearrested me, sent me back to juvenile, and I was told that I was being tried as an adult and that I would be charged with the same things my cousin was charged with because I was there. And I was like, I was there, but I never touched anybody. Well, over the next couple of years, as we turned 17, they got bound over to Rice Street, Fulton County Jail in Atlanta, Georgia. And they waited till we turned 18. And we was basically pushed, prodded by public defenders, we call them public pretenders, to basically just take a blind plea. And that's what I did. I took a blind plea. My cousin took a blind plea. And the judge said, what would you like to say? I said, ma'am, I didn't do anything. I was there that night, but I didn't do anything. And she said, well, your cousin just came in here and said the same thing. Since nobody did anything, you're going to do 20 years. And you will serve every bit of 8 of it. And we will see you, and hopefully you'll change your life over that time frame. I went to prison, went down the road, and mind you, as a biracial child growing up in the juvenile and now into the county jail and going to prison as a black gangster disciple, already in my files from the chaos and the confusions of being in Atlanta, Georgia streets, it's already in my file, and so they already have me pinpointed to go to the worst dorms, the worst prisons, and the worst situations. Yes, sir.
Bruh, just a minute mark, just to tell you where we at. We're at the 26-minute mark on a 40-minute clip. I can tell we're not gonna get through it all on this one call, so I just want to give you that minute mark to so that you can begin to form as we go into the rest of it, everything that you want to say. But it's some key things that I just want to highlight along the way that I either identify with or recognize in your story. One of them, so I'm from Nashville, and I was charged as an adult as well. So I naturally, when you say words like bound over, when you talk about them pushing you closer, holding you basically so that it's basically holding you closer into your legal adulthood, so that they can get away with that. Whereas now we have the science, the brain science, which indicates that you're an adolescent until your mid-20s. That all really speaks to me. But what speaks to me also is we talk about, or we hear about, these street tribes, gangs, street organizations, represented on the news only one way, only associated with one or two things, killing and drugs. But what I'm hearing from you, and what I recognize as well from my experience of being in prison, and from being shuffled around just some of the right people on the streets, but starting with prison, is that it sounds like there's a path for leadership, for learning or developing leadership skills. And I'm not talking about no average basic leadership skills like I can tell you to flip burgers because I'm the man. No, leadership of men, which is, if you've not been inside of a prison, you can't understand what it means to what leadership really can take from someone, or what's required of someone. But I certainly recognize it. I hear it in your voice, and I want to say, one, that I appreciate it, but I'm fascinated by that, because that is a narrative that is never told, but is definitely there, and in its historical context of the dismantling of the Black Panthers, and all of a sudden a need for organization and leadership popping up across the country when we can't call the police. There is nobody to come in to save us. In places where you literally will have to, like you just said, leave your mother's home, or leave your family's home, or your family can, your brothers and sisters, everybody else can get killed just because they're related to you. Like, it's that type, in that environment when you can't call the police. I don't want to get into my stories because we only got a little time, but I'm just going to say that those are some of the things that really speak to me as you're talking. And perhaps because we're from the same region, it especially is clear to me. So I'm just kind of validating your story and how familiar it sounds, as unique as it is. And we are at 29 minutes. And I'll give you a 35-minute marker, heads up too.
Okay.
So you've gotten, and where you were in the story was that you had, you've gone into prison now, and you're an adult.
Okay. All right. And so as I go into the prison system, as I go through diagnostics, where you're basically brought in from the county jail system, and basically they find out any medical issues, things like that.
Classified.
What's going on? Yeah, like I go into the prison, they go ahead and classify me. He's GD, he's black, he's this, that, and another. Okay, they send me to a housing unit at a private correctional facility, CCA, and I opened up the first gang unit at Wheeler Correctional Facility back in 2000. 400 feet was considered the gang unit, the new gang unit for Georgia's CCA private prison system. And I go in and I immediately take on the role of being that leader type person. Even at the age of 18, 19, 20 years old, I'm having to go in and be.
The mic's off.
I'm organizing guys, making sure the guys are doing what they need to do. And guys were doing me the same way. The older cats that was on the compound, they told me, hey, listen, you can't come out to the yard until you get your GED, player. One thing about it, you say you GED, you say you growth and development, well, you're going to have to get that education. If you don't get no education, brother, you're not an asset to this organization. You're not an asset to this family. And you will not come out on this yard and play no basketball, no football, no nothing. And so I went in there to get my GED. Like, man, I dropped out in the 7th grade. It's going to take forever. And I go in there and the lady said, well, here goes a placement test. And I did the placement test. She said, well, you passed. Try this no other placement test. I took the other placement test. You passed. You're going in to take your GED next week, sir. And I'm like, hold on, I only got a 7th grade education. The last time I was in school, I was out in Dallas, Texas with my white grandparents at a Seventh-day Adventist private school. And I know that they taught us 3 or 4 grades higher than what I was learning in Atlanta, Georgia schools. That's why I got kept back in the 7th grade. But I know I'm not ready for no GED. He said, yes, you are, son. You will be on there taking it on next Friday. And I went in there and I got the mail a couple of months later. I passed. Like, I passed and got a GED with a 7th grade education. And I'm cheering because I'm able to now go out on the yard with my brothers, with my family, with brothers in the institution, because this became my new family now. And just like in the ghetto, my blood relative family, we was hurting so much and divided to where I went to the streets for family. Now I'm in the prison, again, striving to find family, to find, worth, to find value. And so I was taught how to work out and how to exercise right and eat right and become healthy and strong and use my education to help other brothers. But I was the other side, too. I wanted to try to get some weed in to make some money. I wanted to try to make ends meet, because now I'm in here with other necessities. There are other needs and desires that a young man has to be clean, to look decent in his daily attire. And so I ended up getting pissed off with officers because I felt like I was locked up for something I did not do. And so when they tell me what to do, I automatically had an attitude. So I found myself going to a higher level of prison after I hit an officer in the face with a tray. Then I ended up getting into another altercation with other officers at the new prison, Macon State Prison, where they tried to jump on me, and I caught the one by himself, and I retaliated on him. And now they're saying, okay, you are a violent man when it comes to correctional officers. And now I got that label on me. I'm spending 100 days in the hole. And long story short, man, I ended up doing the entire 8 years plus the time I did in juvenile that they never counted. I went back to Atlanta, Georgia. I ended up suppressing issues, feeling like my cousin allowed me to be locked up for a crime he committed when he could have just been 21, as we say. Yeah. And that just means admit that, hey, I fucked up, y'all. I messed up, and you know what, here, you know what I'm saying, I'm going to let my cousin go free because he didn't do anything. He didn't even try that. And so me coming back to the hood, and he been out 5 years. He got out 3 years early because he got a mom. He has a father. He has grandparents. He has siblings and people there to support him. I didn't have anyone but one, what you would call a surrogate-like grandmother. She was with no blood relative, but every month she sent me $25 when she got her Social Security check. And she told me to make that $25 last. So I would buy things like cookies and coffee and juice, and I would finger it up, bomb it up into smaller components so that I could be able to sell it for a profit. And that's how I survived the penitentiary. I learned how to make ends meet in ways that other people didn't see opportunities and availability. And I had to take on the leadership role, because if you don't have a program to give other people, they have a program that is worse to provide you with, and you will go down that path. You don't have a choice. So the only choice I knew to take on was to be assertive and to move first, to be able to present my own method of learning about the Wall Street Journal, studying books by Donald Trump back then in the 90s, when he wrote about his story of going broke, bankrupt, and coming back, going to a party in New York. These are the things that I'm learning about, the Wild Wild West through Louis L'Amour novels, and how to have principles and, These are the things that created the new me. But as I came out of prison at the age of 25, going on 26, I was leaving the worst prison in the state of Georgia, Smith State Prison. I went back to the worst community around the Bluff in Atlanta, Georgia. And within 24 hours, I was selling reefer, crack rock, and I had a bottle of liquor in my hand. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. You know, I ended up staying out there, and I ended up doing what I needed to do to stay down and get the money, and got a house within about 3 weeks.
Heads up.
I rented a house out, and I had a place for me and my cousins to stay. And now the brother that's trying to bring the family back together. In the midst of it, I'm still suppressing issues. I've been in prison, and y'all forgot about Dre. And I was hurting, and I'm back around y'all, and now y'all acting like everything is normal, but it's not. So before long, I found myself drinking too much, and I want to stay up, so I go and get me a little bit of powder cocaine to try to keep it going a little longer, make a few more dollars, not think about the issues that still hurting inside of me from the pain of being neglected or being abandoned.
Yo, we at the 36-minute mark.
I knew it. I was making decisions that didn't make sense. A guy was living in an abandoned house. I hate.
The mic's back on.
Good. With the same guy.
Hey, Cook.
Okay, got 5 minutes.
Well, we got 3.5 now. It's 36.5 because the mic was off. I couldn't interrupt you because you was on the road. Every time I tried to cut in, you was on the road, and I was like, no, I don't want to fuck with the mic because it takes it cuts out like 2 seconds when I turn it on or off. It's good for the audio quality, but it cuts out for 2 seconds. And because you're a good storyteller, it's hard to know when to know when to jump in. But I was gonna say, here in 3.5 minutes, I gotta cut this cut off because it's a 40-minute record limit. But I can turn around and literally hit record right over again. So depending on I don't know how much time you got to talk, but this is something that we can pick up as well. Tomorrow. I am overwhelmed with joy. We got this because you've covered so much, and you notice the parts of your story that matters. I can tell you're reflective because what you're slowing down for us to notice is that from the moment, as soon as you got out, you never had a chance. Not only did you have to confront this traumatic experience just happened to you, and the interpersonal tragedy of seeing that all your people who are there for you now was not there when it mattered. You've been on that wall, this other side of the wall. You know what isolation feels like. You know, and it's hard to be around people like that and to try to do something different. Like it's like you didn't have a chance. But you don't have to. You didn't say that. You don't have to say that. But the way you tell your story allows us to hear that in your words. So I'm a matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and just stop.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I'm recording now.
Okay, and we was just speaking about how I got out of prison. I went back to the west side, back to Aunt Key's couch. You know what I'm saying? You know, back with the drugs in my hand. I'm selling the dope. I'm making ends meet. I'm not putting no gun in my hand. I'm not going around certain things, but certain things of survival instinct. Yes, I picked them up and I immediately toted them.
Are you on paper? By the way, are you on paper?
Yeah, they actually I was sentenced to 20 years to serve 8 from the time I turned 17, which was adult status. And then after I maxed out on the 8-year sentence, I was then walking into intensive probation, where I'm now required to pay fines, to be up under an intensive approach by probation officers to come to my home, 2, 3 times a week, make sure I'm in the house by 5 to 6 o'clock, to make sure that I'm out here working on the side of the streets at least 3 days a week, free for the county, that I'm making regular urinalysis tests, that I'm paying these fines, I'm paying this retribution back to the guy that got beaten in the case. Like, it was intense, for real. But anyway, long story short, we had to do that for 2 years. I never made it that long.
What was it, community corrections? Or what did they have in Atlanta?
Probation.
Okay, intensive probation.
Probation.
Okay.
Yeah, intensive probation officers. They got special officers with special office units that's their whole detail is to get you in there, get you acclimated to, hey, we're going to be coming out to your residence a few times a week. We're all going to be making sure that you check in at this community service.